Good afternoon, Oneberg Nation, Oneberg social medias on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome to the Steelers postgame show. I am Ed Troop, your host. The Steelers this afternoon fall at Cleveland. The mistake by the lake, 13-10, as their kicker at the end, Dustin Hopkins for the Browns, hits a 34-yard field goal with just 2 seconds left to give the Browns a last-second victory and give the Steelers a little piece of their own medicine, something they have done well all season long, coming back at the end of a game, getting a lucky break and winning the game on maybe a late interception, field goal, touchdown, anything. But today that was just not in the cards for your Pittsburgh Steelers as they lose 13-10 on the road and they fall to 6-4 overall. Let's bring in our special guest to talk about it this afternoon. My good friend Dawn Rebel joining us. And Dawn, tough loss for the Steelers. And as you and I were talking a little bit offline this afternoon, a game in which going in, we thought that they could win, they should win. But ultimately, it was the Browns who gave the Steelers a dose of their own medicine, winning on the last second game.
Hey, I hate to admit it because of the long-time rivalry between these two, but Cleveland's they got the number one ranked defense in the NFL. So you knew you were going up against that with a less than average offense. But with them starting, rookie quarterback, his second start ever, the whole Deshaun Watson injury, out for the year. This was there. It was there. The Steelers, I thought the defense, as did the whole team, got off to a bit of a slow start. That first touchdown for Cleveland, let's be honest. We were fortunate that we weren't down 2-0 early. It should have been a safety on the Pickett sack and the second play or the first play from scrimmage. But they jump out to the 7-0 lead and a short drive, 50 yards. The defense, the Steelers defense, did its job after that until the very end. And, when you can get absolutely nothing going offensively, yes, they have a great defense.
Right.
But when you can get absolutely nothing going offensively, I don't know that they got more than 2 first downs on any drives. That's bad. That's bad. And you walk that fine line enough, eventually you're going to fall off.
Yeah, everybody's been talking about it for weeks now that this formula for Steeler victory in 2023 was eventually going to come back and haunt them, come back and bite them. And today it sure did. Early on, I agree with you that Myles Garrett's sack in the end zone on Pickett on the first offensive play of the game for the Steelers should have been a safety.
Yes, it should have been. Yeah.
They didn't call it that way. And the Browns really capitalized early on. Their quarterback with both of us follow the NFL pretty extreme. I had never heard of Dorian Thompson-Robinson until Wednesday of this past week when he was named the starting quarterback for the Browns. And then I come to find out he was UCLA's quarterback last year when he played Pitt in a bowl game. There again, didn't pick up on that.
He got pulled in that game.
Yeah, exactly. He gets pulled in that game. And he had an awful start earlier this year against the Ravens in his first career game. But today – did enough to win. 24-43, 165 yards, no touchdowns and interception. Meanwhile, on the other side, Kenny Pickett, 15 of 28, 106 yards. And I don't know about you, Dawn, but, our patience with Pickett is starting to run pretty thin here. You would hope at this point, now halfway through his second season, we'd start to see some better signs.
Yeah, I've battled that. I really have. I think with all the success that Ben had early on, especially team success, I think that we were sort of, okay, here's another first-round draft pick, that we were expecting that. And especially this year with the offseason that he had, there were high expectations for this team. And it hasn't worked. It hasn't I know Matt Canada has been the poster child of evil in this city, and I'm a guy who believes in the Jimmies and Joes. I don't care who's calling the plays. You got to execute. But I thought that we reverted in that aspect as well. I mean, I thought the second quarter we started running the ball.
Right.
And that's really what this offense is now. I mean, we're having zero success in the passing game. Run the ball. We have the last 2 weeks led to success. But we got away from it. I didn't understand in the second quarter, we'd get like 6-7 yards on a first down, and then second down, we'd be throwing the ball. And the quarterback play was extremely disappointing, no question.
Yeah, and Pickett, who has put together some game-winning drives, obviously late last season and throughout this season, you kind of thought, well, maybe here we go again. He could at least make some throws. But just to recap, that the Steelers get the ball back with 1:42 left in the game, 10-10. They have the ball, decent field position at their own 30-yard line. Really, the graphic goes up on the screen. They only need about 29 yards to get in Chris Boswell field goal range to win the game. And Pickett comes in for his 3 incomplete passes, 2 to Deontay Johnson, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, who was very ineffective today. But they go 3 and out in 24 seconds. They punt the ball back and give Cleveland plenty of life with 1:16 left. And they put together a drive there. 8 plays, 48 yards. Dustin Hopkins, the game-winning field goal from 34 yards out. But I think that sequence with the Steelers getting the football at their own 30, all they need to do, 29 yards, Don, that's 3 or 4 plays, right? Get the ball past midfield, get in Boswell range, and win the game. And they simply just couldn't do it. 24 seconds later, they punt the ball back to Cleveland.
They got the ball in Cleveland territory thanks to an incredible catch by Pickens, right? It was a terrible pass behind Pickens. He adjusts his body, contorts his body, makes a great catch. So right. You're right. We're in Cleveland territory, and it looks like the old formula is going to come true. But Deontay Johnson, who was invisible the entire game, and I'm not unless you see. I'm a big believer. Unless you see the all 22, the sky, the camera up above, and you can see really what's going on. Hard to tell from TV, but so you don't know if they paid special attention to him and maybe we're double covering him. I have no idea, but invisible. Then all of a sudden we start trying to force the ball to him. First down, another drop. Second down, incomplete. Third down, pass way over his head. No chance at all to make that catch, which would have been a first down, by the way, which is one of the few times on 3rd and long that they actually threw to or beyond the sticks, which is another issue that I have. The play calling was not good. The execution was terrible. And just that sequence that you talked about, once the Steelers got the ball, 24 seconds or whatever, they're punting it back. Cleveland gets it at their own 35. Again, the quarterback, especially in the second half, Thompson Robinson, did nothing.
Right. It sure shut him down.
And then it's like boom, 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 boom. 3-4 passes, slants, which you never see, the Steelers running those slants for 7-8 yards a pop. I mean, it's hard to put this one on the defense. I thought the defense played well. I was worried about their run game, which is very good. The defense totally shut it down. Landon Roberts was a beast, had a monster game.
He sure did.
But and with all the issues we have right now, injury-wise, and especially in the back half, the secondary, I thought the defense did its part. Special teams did nothing, less than nothing. I thought Harvin had a bad game, and the offense was just deplorable.
Well, you mentioned Harvin. That one punt where he shanked it. Here's a guy that you and I talked about it weekly. He'll come in and nail a punt 60, 70 yards, and you're thinking, man, this was a great draft pick. Remember, draft pick from a few years ago. And then he comes in, just shanks one. Just too much inconsistency with that punting game. And really, when the Steelers need it and need it badly, it just doesn't show up sometimes. And certainly that did today. You can't pin the loss solely on Harvin, the punter, but it certainly didn't help him in a couple different situations today.
In a game where defense is king, it's those hidden yards of special teams where you look for a play. Okay, we got the one turnover, but that wasn't enough. It staved off possibly a field goal for Cleveland earlier in the second half. But those hidden yards, directly led, I think, to their touchdown in the first quarter when they got the ball at midfield. I mean, that's right away. They got a couple first downs, hemmed us in. We did nothing except get away with a safety. And then we were punting from our end zone, average punt. They get it at midfield, and down they go.
And we're getting your comments here on Oneberg. It is the Steelers post-game show. Ed Troop alongside Dawn Rebel recapping the Steelers' 13-10 loss at Cleveland. I appreciate everybody's comments out there. KJ checks in and says, gave our offense more than enough opportunities. Bill Patterson, Bill, I would post your comment here, but it's really long. I don't know if it would show up for everybody to read, but I'll go ahead and read it for you. What a pathetic display on offense. The line couldn't block. Pickett stared down his receivers again, and when he did make the throw, it was usually off target. When was the last time we saw a crossing route over the middle? Don just mentioned that. When Roethlisberger played, maybe. Canada needs to be gone yesterday. They gave the ball to Warren once after his TD. Once. I didn't realize that. Cleveland's quarterback went 4 for 4 on the final drive. Kenny, 0 for 3. Pathetic. Bill, hard to argue with some of your points there. And, Don, you mentioned about not being able to throw across the middle, and Cleveland did so easily there at the end. But let's talk about Jaylen Warren for a second. 9 carries, 129 yards today, a touchdown, another 16 yards receiving. Gives them a total of 145 total yards for the game. And Najee Harris, wow, 12 carries, 35 yards, no touchdowns, 1 yard receiving in the air. Is it now time for us to officially put Jaylen Warren as running back number 1 in this offense? I know they've come out, they announced him as the starter with Najee Harris last week at home. Big deal was made about that to give him some recognition. This week it came out that they would split 50-50 and be shared starters. But isn't it time that we see Jaylen Warren get 80% of the carries in the games instead of 50%?
No. I know that's I know that that's the,
I build it all up and then you shut it right down.
No. That's the battle cry. That's what everybody believes. I think what they have now is perfect. And I think, at the beginning of the season, it was more Najee than Jaylen. And Jaylen earned more action, and he's gotten more action. But I don't want to. I think what you have now with them both getting similar type carries. Yes, he had the tremendous, really the only play the offense made, right? And a lot of that was his. It was him late in the game. That one, I think it was a pass where he broke a couple tackles, was stiff arming guy. I mean, he fights, and Harris does too. But Warren fights for those extra yards, and where on an offense where every freaking yard is crucial, it seems.
Absolutely.
That's huge. But I think the way it is now, pretty much splitting reps. Last week at home, they both were announced as starters coming out of the tunnel, which I thought was a really nice gesture. I think they have a good thing now. Warren has become more involved as the season has progressed. But keep them healthy, keep them fresh. I like the rotation. I think they're at their best when they're fresh, because a lot of the plays that you're seeing are second half, specifically fourth quarter plays, where they're both having success because they've stayed fresh while the defenses have been worn down.
We had Ryan Shazier on Oneberg with us back in September, our Oneberg Influencer of the Month. And I remember talking to Ryan offline about the Steelers at the time with Warren and Najee Harris. He brought up a good point. He said, hey, look, when Harris is in the game, 95% of the time he's getting the ball with a handoff. So the defense knows they can stack the box. They know what's coming. When Warren's in the game, they back off. They think it's going to be more of a pass play out of the backfield or something downfield. So at the time, even back in September, now we fast forward 2 months later, defenses are still picking up on that a little bit. The only difference now is looks like the Steelers are giving the ball to Warren a little bit more traditionally out of the backfield. He's hard to bring down. He plays at 110%, but I have to agree with you as well. I think you bring up a good point. In today's NFL, having 2 healthy, tough running backs in the backfield definitely make a difference. But I am under the opinion, I think it's time to start giving Warren more carries. We shall see as the season goes on. Transitioning a little bit, Dawn, to the receiving corps today. We mentioned earlier Deontay Johnson, his lack of production today. 2 catches for 16 yards. That's it. George Pickens, not too much better, 4 catches for 38 yards. Overall, the Steeler receiving core struggling. Kenny Pickett struggling. The run game's there. We've seen glimpses in the last few weeks of it starting to get off the ground. We're seeing Broderick Jones pulling from a tackle standpoint, which is beautiful for anybody that follows offensive linemen and blocking out there. When you see Broderick Jones swinging on a run play
and he was downfield blocking on Warren's long run.
Yeah, he did it again today. The running game, I feel like, is starting to maybe take a step forward. That's important, especially as we get into these winter months in the AFC North play. But the passing game, whether it's Pickett or these receivers, they're sure struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's broke. It's all broke. You know, you can point your finger at Canada. You can point your finger at Pickett. You can point your finger at the receivers. And I'm not going to tell you which finger to point. But I just think right now you can't just say it's this or it's this or it's this. I think the entire thing isn't working. I know there was excitement with Freiermuth coming back today. What do you have? 1 catch?
Yeah.
You know, I say don't forget about Darnell Washington. I think he filling in for Freiermuth. He's not the receiver that Freiermuth is. Okay, but I think his blocking led to a lot of success on the ground. He's almost like another tackle out there. He's so big. So I think that, you know, if I just say don't forget about Washington now that Freiermuth is back. Get him out there. Let him do his thing, which is blocking. And right now, I tell you, that's why the second quarter mystified me, because this is a running team. They have no passing game. And yet they popped a few runs, and then they would 3rd and 2, and they were dropping back to pass. And yes, Cleveland has a tremendous pass rush, but I just was hoping that once you send Pickett, you send Austin deep, and just freaking throw it up there. Maybe you get a catch, maybe you get a penalty, and even if it's incomplete, isn't that better than spiking a failed screen time and time again? Right.
My goodness, the screenplay's just not there as well. And you really, you know, Matt Canada, obviously, that's simple. We could sit here for 30 minutes and enjoying all the comments that are coming across here on Oneberg about Canada, and, of course, the old traditional cry, fire Canada. But the Steelers, in my opinion, I've been saying this for weeks, problems go way deeper than Matt Canada. Early on, before the running game got going, I talked about the offensive line and their lack of abilities. Now, again, that has picked up a little bit. They're starting to get a little bit of a running game going. I know a couple comments here talking about pass protection on Kenny. Yeah, he has not had a lot of pass protection at all this season either. But at the same time, he's keeping the ball too long, taking a sack when he shouldn't be, should be throwing it away. Or even just simply, somebody mentioned earlier in the comments too, go back to what he did so well at Pitt, and that's just run with the football. Take off, use his legs to his advantage. He's just simply not there.
You know,
hey, Don, I do. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there was a play where we had the ball, I think, at their 40-yard line. I think it was the early fourth quarter, where he took a sack and we ended up punting the ball. But again, without seeing all 22, it's hard to say. But it looked like it was either Austin or Johnson coming across the middle. No brown jersey near him. And Pickett was looking right at him, didn't pull the trigger. And that's
right.
I know they've probably pounded it into his head to protect the football, but I mean, golly gosh, when things are going this bad and you need a play, sometimes you got to take a chance.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. You got to get something going and take a shot downfield, especially when you have the ability of a George Pickens. And they mentioned it on the broadcast. He was man-on-man, one-on-one a few times. And Pickett has taken advantage of that during the course of the season and throw the football downfield and try to make a play. And today just simply didn't do that. Hey, let's talk a little bit defense today, Don. After a little bit of a shaky start, the Steelers defense, especially in the second half, really regrouped. They're banged up. I mean, we could sit here and go through that as well. No Minka Fitzpatrick for the 3rd straight game. Of course, now we're down both of our inside linebackers. You mentioned Roberts earlier. I thought he played his best game as a Steeler so far this season. was a big plus sign. But, Cam Hayward, a little quiet today. TJ Watt had the 1 sack, had 6 tackles. I want to talk about him and Myles Garrett in a second. But Watt, still makes the sack. But other than that 1 sack, he was a little bit quieter today than normal, too. The Steelers defense struggled early, but they regrouped, kept them in it. And in the second half, just that last drive, really, the game-winning field goal drive. Other than that, they sure shut down this Browns offense in the second half.
Well, they did, and they should have. I mean, they're considered an above-average National Football League defense, and you're going up against as green of a rookie quarterback as you can possibly get, a guy who had zero confidence after his first start when he did nothing right against Baltimore. But, he had a little success early, built on it, and you could see his confidence growing. Outside of that, those first 2 drives, the one that got sort of flipped the field and got them into Steeler territory, leading to the punt, the near safety, the punt, and then the touchdown drive of 50 yards. Steelers then adjusted, took away the short passing until that very last drive. I'm sorry, but we did nothing on 3 plays. Right. 3 and out in 14 seconds, and yet they get the ball at their own 35, 3-4 completions, and boom, they're in field goal range. And that can't happen. They needed to make a stop there, and who knows what happens in overtime. But you can't let a rookie quarterback pop 4 passes, 4 slants, or 3 slants in the 1 curl near midfield and make those completions. The defense played well, but needed to really come up big and did not on that last drive.
A lot of talk this week about the Steelers stopping the run game. Speaking of defense, just want to hit the Browns running numbers here real quick. Kareem Hunt today, 12 carries, 36 yards. Jerome Ford, who was a concern because after Chubb went down in the first meeting here at home at Acrisure Stadium, it was Jerome Ford who actually had a pretty good game against the Steelers running the ball. They held him to 31 yards rushing today, 12 carries, 31 yards. He did have the 1 touchdown in that opening quarter. But other than that, the Steelers, 96 total yards given up on the ground today as a unit. It wasn't the run game that got him. It was that last drive. And it was the lack to make the big play when they had to there at the end.
If you'd have told me before the game, Eddie, that Ford and Hunt would have had 24 carries for 67 yards, I would have said we win this game and maybe win it easily.
Right.
That was my biggest fear coming in, because they do, even though there's no Nick Chubb anymore, they still do have a good running attack. Their offensive line is built for that, and they can still do damage and have done damage this season post Chubb on the ground. Steelers really shut that down. That's what made, again, the results so surprising. And you tip your cap to the rookie Thompson Robinson. He had some passes off target, but he didn't throw any egregious passes. He didn't try to force the issue. And thus we only had the 1 pick, and that was off a deflection. So, they were heaping accolades on him throughout the broadcast, but he deserved some of it. I thought he was the difference with us shutting down their running game, and yet they were still able to get a whole 13 points.
Yeah, they sure did. Low scoring. Really, if you take out the emotion side of it, of everybody being Steeler fans, us being Steeler fans, and being a little bit objective towards the black and gold, and I chuckle when I say that. But if you take that all out, this was a normal AFC North defensive battle, a game that you see every single season between either the Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, or Browns. Low scoring, hard hitting, grind it out. Whatever team makes maybe a late mistake here or there is probably going to cost them the game, or a team's going to make a drive real late and win it at late. So this was a typical normal AFC North game, but just unfortunately for the Steelers, it just did not go their way. Hey, one other note, Myles Garrett, just 2 tackles today, but 2 sacks. So you have TJ Watt with 6 tackles today, 1 sack. Myles Garrett, 2 tackles, 2 sacks today. The Steelers have done pretty well, in my opinion, against Myles Garrett throughout the course of his career, but he did get him for two sacks today. And Garrett's having a good year. That defense is having a good year. And the Browns now in second place 7-3. Dawn, I want to get your thoughts. We still have about 6 minutes here left on the post-game show. I want to get your thoughts on the AFC North race as we enter the final stretch here, as well as the AFC playoff picture. The AFC North now looks like this. Baltimore, their big Thursday night win, 8-3. First place. Cleveland now 7-3. Second place. The Steelers check in at third, 6-4. Now the Bengals 5-5. Outside of the head-to-head, we always talk about the next important category, and that's your record in conference. So real quick, just a note, Baltimore's 5-3 in the AFC. Cleveland now 5-2 against AFC teams. The Steelers 4-3, and Cincinnati 1-5 versus AFC teams so far this season.
Bengals are in trouble with or without Joe Burrow. We know that he's out for the season, but even with him, they have dug themselves a serious hole that unless they win 6 of 7, they're probably going to be spectators for the postseason. Cleveland, big win, huge win. Their schedule a few weeks ago didn't look like it looked rather light down the stretch, but Denver has sort of turned things around. The Chargers now are sort of in desperate mode, and it's the Bengals that have or it's Baltimore that has the Chargers, not Cleveland. But
yeah, Cleveland's real quick, Don, not to interrupt you, but just to give you Cleveland's last games, they go to Denver next week,
right? Tough game,
and then they're at home against the Rams. They are at home against the Jaguars, at home against the Bears, and then they finish up at Houston.
Yeah, you're talking about Wilson. You're talking about Stafford. You're talking about Jacksonville. Those are teams that can score the football. Something the Steelers couldn't.
Yeah.
So I think that while their defense is going to keep them in games, I don't know that they can sustain it with the running attack and with Thompson Robinson. Okay, give them credit today, but to me, I think they're going to fade. Baltimore's legit. I don't see them winning the AFC, but I think now with everything how it's played out, I think they're going to win the AFC North. And Steelers, who knows? I mean, who really knows at this point? You'd like to think that at 6-4, they're still in good shape, but that was a bad loss today.
Well, I think we talked about it for the last few weeks when we looked at these 2 back-to-back division games on the road at Cleveland, at Cincinnati, in Ohio. If you could split and go 1-1 in these 2 games, right, you're probably still in pretty good shape, 7-4 coming back home. And I'll get to the rest of that Steelers schedule in a second. But I thought it would be a little bit flipped. A few weeks ago, it looked more like Cleveland was the more vulnerable team in this 2-game stretch, and Cincinnati was on the upswing. Well, now, obviously, as we saw today, Cleveland, especially their defense playing as well as they are, and now with Joe Burrow being out for Cincinnati, that game next week looks like now the Steelers, I don't want to say must win, but, man, that's a game that they have to get next week at the Bengals.
Yeah, you're going to be facing another rookie quarterback, right? Another quarterback that nobody really has heard a whole lot about. You can't go 0-2 against teams that are playing second or third string quarterbacks. You got to split. And you're right. We said that before. Didn't work out today, and it's a stinky feeling right now. But I think that if they come back, take care of business as they usually do at the old Paul Brown Stadium, whatever they're calling that nowadays, then okay, you split those 2, you come back home, and then you take care of business in 4 of your last 6 or whatever, and you're going to be a wild card team.
Yeah, the Steelers, after going to Cleveland next week, host 2-9 Arizona. And then a quick turnaround on Thursday night, which could be still flexed to a Sunday, by the way. Wouldn't be surprised if that happened because the Patriots 2-8 at this moment. And then you go to Indianapolis, who's 5-5. You host the Bengals, 5-5. And then you got the Seahawks at Cincinnati, at Seattle. And then, of course, at the Ravens to finish up the season. So, yeah, Steelers, I think, still in a pretty good spot. A game in which today I think we were hoping we could have, especially if you could win. If you could have won today and then win at Cincinnati next week, boy, you really put yourself.
You're in the driver's seat, yeah.
You sure are. Now you're in a situation where if you drop at Cincinnati Cincinnati game, yeah, you're still in it, but man, no one's going to be feeling good about the Steelers going into that home stretch when they come home to host the Cardinals and the Patriots. Don, real quick on the AFC playoff picture, currently as we sit, Kansas City number 1, Baltimore number 2, Jacksonville, big win today at home against the Titans. They're now number 3, Miami number 4, Cleveland now number 5. They move up to the top wild card spot. Houston number 6, and the Steelers at that 7th last spot currently right now. If the playoffs were to start, they would go to Baltimore.
Well,
we're many weeks away from talking about that. They got to get in first.
Yeah, no, they do. And at this point, no matter who they play, whether it's, Kansas City, Baltimore, Jacksonville, they're going to have to muddy it up a little bit, but they've got to be better offensively. You muddy the water, and you hope to get some breaks, and they did. They had the splash play touchdown with Warren. They had the 1 interception, the 1 turnover. But boy, you got to move the ball. I'm not looking for the 84 Chargers or anything like that.
Right.
But put a couple of drives together, and they never did that today. Not one.
Steelers lose 13-10 at Cleveland. Don, before we wrap it up and let you go officially here for today, Don and I go way, way back. The Trib Live High School Sports Network is where Don finds his home and gives you, throughout the year, the best coverage of high school sports across Western Pennsylvania.
Are you reading a script? Are you reading that email I sent you what to say?
I am not. But what's weird is, we've been at this for 25 years, and you've always been in the host seat, and I've always been in the other seat. So today is the first time ever we've reversed roles. But before I let you go, the championship games at AccuSure Stadium coming up, of course, yesterday, the 6A championship, Central Catholic losing to North Allegheny. Yep. The 5A championship, Peters Township, nearby to me, and I saw Peters several times this year, and way, way back, the first time I saw him, I said their defense is not only going to win them a WPIAL championship, it's going to probably possibly win them a state championship. That's how good that defense is. Well, they got the first part of that equation done yesterday, winning the 5A championship. Want to get your thoughts real quick on those two, but also just talk about the other 4 championships coming up at AccuSure Stadium. You got McKeesport in Class 4A against Aliquippa. Class 3A, Bell Vernon, my Leopards, playing Avonworth in a rematch of last year's 3A championship. Help me out on the 2A, man. I can't remember the 2A. Help me
Valley,
out.
Beaver Falls.
Beaver Falls, that's it. And then the 1A, you got Fort Cherry, which has been the talk of the WPIL this season. And they're playing Southside.
Yep, also undefeated. Kudos to Peters Township, first ever WPIL championship, well deserved. They blew the doors off everyone this year. They're undefeated going into the state playoffs. Also, North Allegheny, Art Walker is I think 6th championship. As head coach in North Allegheny, third. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 championships. It's the 7th. 5 with NA, 2 with Central Catholic. Anyway, congratulations to NA for repeating. Yes, Aliquippa, Bell Vernon, Steel Valley are the favorites in 4A, 3A, 2A. Don't sleep on McKeesport, Avonworth, or Beaver Falls. Good challengers. And the game of the day on Black Friday at AccuSure might be that Class A game, Southside against Fort Cherry, 13-0 versus 13-0.
Well, I can tell you, I live on the edge of Cannon Mac and Fort Cherry, as you know, McDonald here, and right over the hill. I can look at Fort Cherry High School not too far from me, and they are fired up in this community about the Rangers this year. I mean, everywhere you go, everybody you talk to, it's Fort Cherry, Fort Cherry, Fort Cherry. And, wow, they have a great opportunity this week against a very good undefeated team. Southside, which, by the way, is not very far from Fort Cherry, just a little further up the road.
Maybe Matt Seed can quarterback the Steelers next week in Cincinnati.
They may need him, too. And then he can come play for the Pirates in the spring because they need him for baseball as well.
That's right.
So, Don, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll have to have you on again to talk Steeler football. Again, as the game was going on, I was getting more excited. I thought we'd actually have another comeback victory to talk about, but just wasn't in the cards.
Tell Brian I said hello. Happy holidays to you and your family, my friend.
Yep, absolutely. Don Rebel joining us here today. That's going to do it for our Steeler post-game show here on Oneberg. Glad you could join us here on Oneberg on Facebook and on YouTube. We'll see you next week after the Steelers-Bengals game at Cincinnati, 1 o'clock next Sunday for more post-game coverage.